She spotted the girl at the far end of the auction yard, barefoot, wrapped in a tattered shawl, her face hidden beneath grime and tangled hair. No one bid on her. Not because she was too young or too weak, but because she didn't speak. They called her the mute one. She hadn't said a single word since she'd been dropped off by a cart driver who disappeared before the dust settled. Most folks at the livestock auction weren't looking to take in a child. Especially not one that wouldn't talk. Especially not one with eyes that seemed too hollow for someone her age. But Eleanor, widowed just 3 winters ago, wasn't like most folks. She'd come to buy feed. Not a child. But something in the girl's silence pulled at her. It was the same kind of silence that filled her cottage every night. The same kind that had settled deep inside her since the day her husband, Walter, never returned from the hills. The bidding started at $1. No takers. Then 50 cents. Still nothing. 25, the auctioneer asked, half-heartedly. Eleanor raised her hand. Heads turned. Sold. The girl didn't flinch as Eleanor approached. She merely stared, expressionless. Eleanor reached out, gently placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. The girl followed, wordless, barefoot over gravel, into the cart, into a new life. Eleanor didn't ask her name. Not that day. Not the next. She offered her a warm bath, fresh bread, and a soft bed near the fireplace. The girl accepted it all, quietly. She moved like smoke there, but barely. She never cried. Never laughed. Just watched. The neighbors called Eleanor soft-headed. You don't know what she's seen, said the town grocer. Could be trouble, muttered the blacksmith. But Eleanor had seen pain before. She'd lost her baby just 3 weeks after birth, lost her husband years later. Pain didn't frighten her, it lived with her. Still, the silence was heavy. Weeks passed. The girl, now dressed in a blue wool dress Eleanor stitched by hand, still hadn't uttered a sound. But she helped. She watered the garden. She fed the hens. She brushed Eleanor's hair at night like a ritual. There was something gentle in her. And yet, something buried. One cold morning in February, Eleanor found the girl outside before sunrise, barefoot again, standing in the frost. You'll catch your death out here, Eleanor whispered, wrapping a shawl around her. The girl pointed. Toward the woods. Then held her hands over her ears. And shook. It was the first time Eleanor saw fear on her face. That night, Eleanor lit 2 candles. One for Walter. One for the girl. She sat by the fire, thinking. There had to be something behind the silence. Word spread quickly weeks later when the sheriff came knocking. You took in that girl, he said, almost accusingly. Eleanor stood in the doorway, calm. Yes. She stays. The sheriff shifted uneasily. A man came to town. Says she belongs to him. Claims she ran off with some farmhand and got into trouble. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. She didn't run. Someone left her. The sheriff sighed. Might be. But we'll need to talk to her. Get her side. She doesn't talk, Eleanor said. But I'll find a way. That night, Eleanor brought out a slate board in chalk. She drew a house. Then a tree. Then pointed to the girl. The girl blinked, slowly. Then, picked up the chalk. She drew a barn. Then fire. Then stick figures. One lying down. One holding something. She dropped the chalk and ran to the corner of the room, curling up. Eleanor didn't press. But she understood. Something terrible had happened. Something that had stolen this child's voice. The next day, Eleanor rode to town. Found the sheriff. She's not ready to speak, she said. But I am. And Eleanor told them everything she knew. How she'd found her. How the girl trembled when anyone raised their voice. How she refused shoes. How she never touched meat. Then, days later, the truth came out. The man who claimed to own her, he'd once worked a backcountry homestead where orphan girls were kept for labor. A neighbor had seen smoke rising from the barn weeks ago. It had burned to the ground. The man had disappeared, and the authorities thought everyone inside had perished. But one girl had survived. The silent one. The town gasped. Whispers filled the pews on Sunday. The sheriff came to apologize. But Eleanor didn't care for apologies. She cared for the girl. That night, Eleanor lit a fire. Warmed milk. Sat beside the girl. "Your story is safe here," she said gently. "You're safe here." The girl turned. Then, so softly Eleanor almost missed it, she whispered, "Clara." It was the first word. Eleanor smiled, tears in her eyes. "Hello, Clara." Months passed. Clara began to speak, slowly. One word a day. Then two. She'd whisper at first, then laugh when Eleanor made her rhubarb pie. She planted tulips by the windows. She played with the neighbor's dog. And then one afternoon, Clara stood before the church steps as the town gathered for the spring festival. She held a flower in her hand, her voice shaking. "I was scared. But I remember, a woman gave me bread. She sang to me. She called me sunshine. I never forgot." Tears welled in eyes across the crowd. Some gasped. Some lowered their heads. "I thought no one would want me," Clara continued, looking over at Eleanor. "But someone did. And now I want to grow. And help others grow too." The crowd broke into soft applause. Eleanor, from the back of the crowd, smiled through tears. That summer, Clara started helping at the town's small schoolhouse. She didn't say much. But when she did, the children listened. Because hers was a voice that had known pain and chose healing. Years later, Clara would grow into a young woman who read poetry to children in the same auction yard where she was once sold for 25 cents. And at the entrance of that schoolhouse hung a plaque.